Good evening, everyone. Look, happy Thursday. The weather is beautiful here in New York. It is a little warm, but I am super excited about our guest tonight. I'm going to say, we're just going to be BFFs, Phoebe, okay? It because we met at a conference, a one woman conference, a couple of months ago, and I was honored to be a guest on Phoebe's podcast. And when we have a conversation or when we talk, we just connected. Okay, we really connected at the conference, and we've been connected ever since. And that's what I love about sisterhood, and that's what I love about meeting and connecting like-minded women that are in the same space. So listen, everyone, welcome to Sis Table Talk. I am your host, Monique Denton, the founder and CEO of Embrace Your Cake, also Sisters Inspire Sisters. If you are not a part of Sisters Inspire Sisters, go on over to sistersinspiresisters.com. You can join our membership. We also have a wonderful project coming up, which is 50 Phenomenal Women, where we are highlighting 50 women to be a part of our next book anthology. We are looking for women to write about themselves or to write about a phenomenal woman in their life. You can also find out more information about 50 Phenomenal Women on our website. So listen, this conversation tonight, what I'm going to say is take out your notebook, get your pen, get your pads ready, be ready to take notes. If you have questions, please put them in the comments. Thank you once again for joining, like, and share. I want to turn the mic over to our wonderful guest, my sister, Miss Phoebe Leona. And Phoebe, if you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and why you started.
Thank you, Monique. Well, I am a speaker, a teacher, a dancer, and an author. And I definitely feel joy in all of those titles because I bring the space for people to feel more connected to their bodies through what we call somatic practices. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what that means tonight. Which is basically looking at your inner landscape and then also looking at this expanded awareness so that you can feel more embodied and empowered in living a life that's worth living. So I was a dancer primarily first in the professional dancer world in New York City back in my early 20s. And then I found my way through yoga as my first vocabulary in this healing realm. And I've been a teacher of yoga for over 17 years now. And I've just followed the breadcrumbs along the way. So I did this somatic work, which is really what that word means is just simply to be in your body, to recognize the patterns that we hold in our body and to see that they're not just injuries or illnesses, but they're actually messages to turn the light on of what might be happening bigger in your personal life. And that was the story that I shared with you in the talk where we met at One Woman Connected. Yeah. So it's been such a healing for me over the years to turn that light on. But it also, like I said, I feel so much joy and able to share that with other people and see, oh, it really is like connecting the dots, right? We're not this unconscious, thing that I'm carrying, like this shoulder injury over the years of just carrying a heavy bag. Well, no, there's probably another heavy weight that you've been carrying along the way too. And so I love to be able to guide people to witness that for themselves and then make new choices in their lives.
So that's really interesting. And I remember the talk, and our topic tonight is Our Body Knows. And you spoke, everything that you said just resonated with me. So can you share with us some of the experiences that you had that brought awareness to, what my body is trying to tell me, something's going on?
Yeah. So like I said before, I was always a dancer. So I was always very much connected to my body and always very curious about it. But it really wasn't until like 2013 when I went through a huge transformation. This was the year that my father died, and I also went through a divorce rather suddenly. And previous to that, this was what I talked about in our talk when I got to meet you, where I had about like 6 months before, I had this really horrible chest cold. And there was a night in particular that I remember when I received like the symptoms of this cold. And then fast forward to when I lose my father and when I go through my divorce, and I go to see an acupuncturist shortly after. And, she tells me to check off everything, that all of the symptoms that I have. And one was them being the chest cold that was really bronchitis for about 4 months. And she looked at me and she said, "When did you have this bronchitis?" And I said, "Oh, 6 months ago. I just got over it." And she basically said, "Phoebe, you have been grieving this whole time," because in Chinese medicine,
Wow.
the belief is that the organs are holding energy or holding our emotions if they're unprocessed. And so she was explaining to me that my body knew that there was something to grieve. There was something to grieve before the actual events happened. And so that night that I knew that that's when the cold came on, was the night that I met the person that my ex-husband was having an affair with. So even though my mind didn't know, my body felt it unconsciously. And so when I learned about that, I started to learn a lot more about Eastern medicine, not just Chinese medicine, but Ayurveda, which is the sister science of yoga. And then other teachers like Louise Hay, which is in the Western world, and all these other somatic therapies. I was thinking, we need to, our body isn't our enemy, because I think some of us like think about, we're all up in the head, and then this body is just like our meat sack to get us around from point A to point B. But
Yes.
actually our body is our life partner. It's with us from, the moment we enter into this world until we leave. So let's make friends with it. Let's listen to it. Let's see if it intuitively has these messages that we're not listening to. Can we turn that light on and transform ourselves? And then, yeah.
Now, do you think there was some sort of connection? Because I feel that our intuition, tells us a lot. A lot of times we
Yeah.
listen to it, sometimes we don't. But do you feel that there was a connection, even though you didn't know? Did you have some type of inkling? Did you think, okay, something's wrong, something's going on, not knowing who, but when you met that person, your body reacted? Because I'm also trying to connect the dots with what we're feeling mentally and how it impacts our body. So do you think there was any type of connection at all? Or did you know or think something might be going on?
Yeah, and actually I actually started to make another realization just recently about manifestation. Now this might be like a whole other rabbit hole we might not get to go down. We'll have to do it in the next talk. But I was realizing, so to back up, before I got sick, I had just moved in probably 5 months prior to that into my dream home. So I had been married. We were together for a handful. Well, he's my college boyfriend. So we were together for about 14 years up until that point, and we were married for almost 8. And so here we were, like grown ups. We got to move into our dream home, and I remember feeling like, huh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Like we've done all of the things, and now I would not have admitted that at all to anyone. Like I felt it, but I was like, let's not talk about that. Let's not address that, right? Like let's just figure out the next thing that might bring me joy and happiness. Because here I had envisioned this dream home and this dream life with my partner, and it just fell off. So I think that was the first, like inkling of the knowing.
Mhm.
And whether now I don't know really the timeline in terms of like when he started his emotional affair with this person or not, but I know that consciously, unconsciously, there was this divide in our marriage. And
Yeah.
I felt that. And so I was really stressed about that, which made me more vulnerable to that illness. And then when I met that person unconsciously, I think my body was like, yeah, there's something here. Yeah.
So one of the things that I noticed, and it's interesting, and one of the reasons why I could relate is when you were telling that story. So I recently divorced, was separated since 2019,
Mm.
but it's interesting because after, and I'm not going to say fully got through or recovered, but there's a transition period, there is a transformation period, there are stages of grieving. And I didn't realize that as much as I thought I had it together, that the grief was actually showing. And
Mm.
what someone said to me was actually the bishop that married us. And I remember one day him saying to me, you know what, I can see that you're, feeling much better. I can see that you're doing much better. He
Mm.
was like, you were so sad. And he said, your skin got so dark. And I
Mm.
knew that it was the sadness that you were wearing. Now, we go through different seasons, right? And with different,
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, it's the summertime. I got to change up on my makeup a little bit, or it's the winter time. I got to change up. So I something was off, but I'm like, okay, this is
Mm.
probably a preseason thing. I just have to make some adjustments with my makeup. I could never actually get it right.
Mm.
But for him to say that to me, I really had to think about that because I had no idea that that could have been a connection with how I was feeling. So what are your thoughts on that? And have you ever heard of that before?
Well, what I'll say about specifically grief is that there is no, like, yes, you can go and Google and there's like the 7 stages of grief, but it's not linear at all.
Mhm,
For the arc of emotions, I teach a lot about understanding the landscape of emotions. And for most part, emotions
mhm,
have this arc, right? You have an event that triggers that emotion. Your emotion goes up, you come to the peak of it, and then something regulates you to come back into a homeostasis. This can be with joy, this can be with anger, but with grief, it holds everything. It does hold joy, it holds depression, it holds anger, it holds all of it. And we never know what we're going to get. And we don't, and that means like more of that emotional arc. It's like more of like if you had to draw it, it'd be just like a bunch of swirls and like, oh, a lot of things. So the what you're speaking to is more of like what is showing on the outside.
mhm,
And that, we can't really predict that either because there might be a day. I mean, I remember the day before I found out that I was getting a divorce. So my dad had died in January. I was grieving. I mean, I actually set aside Fridays because that was the day I didn't work too much. I had like one class in the morning and they said, okay, I get to come home and I get to do whatever I need to do. I can cry, I can rip out pages out of my photo albums. I could, scream, I can dance, I can just make a fire. I just gave myself this permission to do whatever. But the thing is like grief has its own rules. So even though I was like Fridays is my grieving day, it would just come out at any other time.
right, right.
Right.
I totally noticed that.
Yeah.
So and I think a lot about, and I think other people think as well, that a lot of times we deal with things mentally. There
Mhm.
might be depression or anxiety or stress that might first start mentally, not realizing that there is a connection and it also impacts our bodies. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then I'm just curious if there's any connection with what you do and what you practice to Reiki and Reiki practitioners. I don't know
Mhm.
if it's the same or if there's a difference.
Mhm.
So if you could just tell us a little bit about that also.
Sure. So just to be clear, restate the first part of the question.
So the
So I
first
didn't get it.
question is, how does your body impact to things that are going on with you mentally?
Yes.
So sometimes you're stressed out and it's
Right.
like, okay, I'm stressed. And then sometimes you have high levels of anxiety.
Yeah.
And before you're recognizing these emotions, your body might actually start acting out the emotions,
Yeah.
before you realize what's going on. So, can you talk to us a little bit about that and what are some of the signs?
Yeah. So this is also quite individual. So for me, when I was going through my own healing journey, I was very connected to my body. But there was one emotion that I did not know how to deal with, and it was anger. And
Mm.
so for me, anger was just because everything was fine. Everything's fine. I'm really sad, but everything is fine. Everything is fine. And what
Right.
happened was that I had anger has this element of heat, of fire, right? Like when we don't really deal with it, right? It we're gonna explode, right? That's like that hot-headed, like, driving rage, drivers with rage, right? Um, so when you don't deal with it, it has to go, that energy of heat, that fire goes somewhere. And so in me, it came out through, and I said this in the talk, urinary tract infections. Like I was literally pissed off at my partners. It was also through my period. Like I had really horrible fibroids that brought me a lot of pain through my periods. So it if you look at the emotion as an element, so like I said, anger is fire. If you don't really deal with it, it's going to go somewhere else in your body. Or it could be, like I said, it could be that explosion to the external world. So if you didn't know how to contain your anger in the moment and you didn't give it a healthy way to express it, then you're going to go and like cut somebody off and, in traffic and get into an accident or a fight or whatever, or lash out at some innocent bystander, right? So it comes out in a lot of different ways if it's not processed in a way that's healthy. So that's just an example of anger. But then all of the emotions have some sort of elements. And if the element isn't balanced, it can manifest in the body as an injury, as disease, or it can manifest out in the external world.
Wow.
Uh, yeah. In terms of what you were asking about the Reiki, I'm not a Reiki practitioner, but Reiki deals with energy, and they do. And so, forgive me because I don't know too much about it. And I actually watched an episode. You interviewed a Reiki master here a couple of weeks ago or a month ago. So you can go back and watch that for more information. But they do hands on. They'll have their hands on your body. They might even do remotely. So they might send you that energy or receive that energy.
Mhm.
So for me, the easy way to put it is that I'm guiding the person who's experiencing it to find their own healing. So if you think of a Reiki practitioner more of like doing something for them or holding that space for them, I'm
Yes.
really more having a conversation. I'm listening to the words that they choose when they're
Mhm.
telling the story about how they're dealing with the anger, the grief, the sorrow, whatever it is. I'm listening to the symptoms that they might be having in their body or the other like situations that just keep happening in their personal world, like that same relationship that just keeps coming over and over again. They're like, why is it happening to me? And you and I had a great conversation about that, to me and for me, right?
Yeah.
But when we're in that victimhood of it's happening to me, there's a disconnect there that you're not seeing that you're a co-creator in that experience. So the work that I do is really first listening to the person telling their story, um, redirecting that energy in a way that they can turn their light on, their own awareness to it. And then
Mhm.
I will also offer them practices, right? So, really tangible practices that might be getting in their body and moving. It might be meditation, it might be journaling. So, it really depends on the person and how I meet them where they are, right? If they're really up in their head, I'm not
Mhm.
going to have them sit and meditate. Like they're gonna be up there just like going through their day, like that situation they're angry about. They're just gonna sit up there. So I might have them do something physical. I might have them dance. I might have them go run, so that they get like what my teacher says, their yayas out, so that they can maybe sit with their thoughts or their feelings, and maybe they go then into a journal exercise. So I meet them where they're at in terms of where they are in their mind, where they are in their connection to their body. Because if someone's been living up here this whole time, having them just go and listen to what their body is, they're so disconnected. So how can I get them into a place where they just feel anything again in their body?
So that's really good. And while you were speaking, and you said something earlier that I just want to go back to,
Yeah.
and that is when you talked about moving into your dream home and just
Mm,
and you talked about manifesting. And sometimes I'm thinking, is there a connection with unhealed wounds? You
mm,
know, manifesting things or expectations or having expectations or manifesting things that aren't even there, right? Because we're like, okay, this isn't going to work out no matter what. I know it's not going to work, or I'm not going to get this promotion. I never do. Positive things don't happen to me.
mhm.
I have to work hard for every single thing that I have. Is there a connection with those types of feelings? And then also in your body with different things that could be going on. And do you believe that you're actually manifesting those negative thoughts into fruition?
Yes, 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 and yes. uh, yeah, we talked about this a bit in the podcast about your story. Um,
Yes.
and what I shared, I believe I shared that day too, and I'll share here is well, I'll use my example. So when I was little, I had a very loving father, and but he also had a drug problem. So whenever I had, good grades, I got all A's on my report card, it was a reason to have a celebration. My dad paid me for all my A's. He took me out to, dinner. But because he was an alcoholic and a drug addict, that celebration turned into an event that was no longer fun. He would get drunk, he would get angry, and then he would decide that he needed to take that money back to go and buy drugs. So over time, unconsciously, I wasn't able to ever trust that celebration. And it was also didn't want the celebration. Like at some point, I unconsciously didn't want to manifest anything good because I didn't trust that it would stay around.
Yes. That's yes. That is so good. And it makes you think about, past for me, if I think about past relationships that did not work out.
Yeah.
And, do I go into them thinking, okay, I know this is not going to work out.
Right.
So I'm just going to, ride the wave until it falls apart. But there's some, things subconsciously, and even in terms of upbringing, you
Yeah.
know, being brought up as be seen and not heard. And
Hmm.
that also impacted me at work. You can't be Miss Know It All. Don't let everyone know everything that you know. Meanwhile, okay, that's keeping me in a mid level position at work, and I'm
Hmm.
trying to get to the executive level position. But because I was taught that you can't do too much, you can't outshine, you can't, I would constantly hold myself back. And I
Hmm.
realized that I was doing it at one time, but I'm like, why am I stuck? At
Yeah.
mid-level, what's going on here? And then thinking about it is I subconsciously,
Yep.
because I was afraid that if I do too much, then I'll be either showing off, or my bosses won't like me, or they won't appreciate me. I could lose my job. So those are things when I think about manifesting, and also how it impacts our body, how we have to recognize and heal from some of those past wounds and
Absolutely.
traumas, and
Yeah.
then I think about in our communities, heart disease is high,
Hmm.
diabetes is high. There's a high level of stroke. And
Hmm.
yes, it goes along with how we're eating. But I also feel it also is unresolved trauma and
Absolutely.
generational behaviors that are passed down, from one generation to the other.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
Yeah,
like,
I wholehearted believe that as well. The beautiful thing is that we're learning more and more about epigenetics, so like how we can actually change our own DNA from those past traumas that we've carried from our ancestors, which is really beautiful and powerful. Um, the one thing I want to speak to in terms of the manifestation that you were just talking about is it's really what I find in the conversations we have about manifestation and mindset. They're all really great conversations, but you do have to do that healing. Now, I can't remember exactly where it came from, but this mantra of the issues are in our tissues. So if
Mm,
we don't heal, our body remembers those traumas. So we can think our way to like changing our mindset, but if our body's still holding those stories, it's going to be really challenging to manifest something new. So we have to get into our body. We have to what I do a lot of times for visualization in terms of manifesting something new is not just the visualizing of the house or the car or the man or whatever it is, but
mhm.
actually feel, how does your body want to feel? How
Oh,
does your body want to feel once you receive that? So what I was realizing, to go all the way back to that full circle of my dream home, was that I pictured the dream home, but I didn't actually picture how my body felt. And so when I finally got my body into that home, and it was like, hmm, that's not, this doesn't feel, this isn't, this feels really foreign to me. And now whether I self sabotage because of that or because I just wasn't fully embodied in it, I'm not sure which one it was at that time, but I didn't have that mind, body, soul connection to that present experience. So that's a lot of the work that I do too, is not just healing the past traumas, but also the future work of, how does your body want to feel in that future experience that you're manifesting now? Because then that'll change your blueprint. It's like changing your blueprint, your DNA, your physical experience. So when you get there, it's like, oh yeah, I'm ready for it.
that is so good. That is
Yeah.
so, a lot of us do vision boards, and
Mhm.
it's all about visualization, but we very rarely talk about how do you feel in that moment. I
Exactly.
want to get to the chat really quickly. So we
Yeah.
have, this is great. I'm always in my mind. Is that a good place to be? And how do we sabotage ourselves with those negative and traumatic childhood events? How do
Mhm.
you release those things from your body?
Okay. So the first question was, is it okay to be in your head? Right?
Exactly. Is this a good place to be?
All right. Well, depends on what's happening up there. if you're
Exactly.
having if you're having a good time, then why not? But what I call the hamster wheel is, like, if you're on that hamster wheel and you're like, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of this? La, 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 la. That's not really a cool place to be. So get into your body. I mean, a lot of the work that I talk about is getting into the body, getting out of the head, into your heart space, right? So I think of, when I say the body, I'm really talking about the heart, talking about the soul, listening to your intuition rather than this chatter. So if you ask a question, like if you get really quiet for a moment and you are not quite sure what to do next, and you say, okay, what does my heart want to do?
Mhm.
And there's a word or maybe a really short phrase, that's heart. That's your body. That's your soul. But if it's like, and then this, that's your head. And your head is connected directly to that ego. The ego is keeping you from, you know, fear. It's helping you, protecting you in those states of fear, the
Mhm.
unknown, right? Even though it might be an exciting experience, it's still unknown. So ego's like, oh, this doesn't feel safe. Let me keep you up here in your head and tell you all of the scenarios that could possibly go wrong. But if your heart knows that it's right, it'll be like, you're all good. It's all good. Just take the next step.
That's good. And that's
Yeah.
also, to me, also connected to, and especially when it's something
Yes.
new that you want to do, or it's part of your purpose or your vision or your mission, is
Mhm.
listening more so to your heart
Yeah.
opposed to listening to those thoughts in your head about, okay, is this going to right? Is this going to work, or is it not going to work? Or going through analysis paralysis, you
Yeah.
know, literally talk ourselves out of so many things because we're so busy analyzing,
Yeah.
what we're thinking, and then things don't get done.
And I'll just, before we get to that next question, also, like, it can be the voices in your head, but also the external voices, right? Like all those external voices really might care for you. Like you told a beautiful story about your mom, and I think your grandma too, about the voice that they were telling you, the
Yeah,
story that you were telling you. But they were doing it from a place of protection, but it wasn't for your highest good, right?
right.
So the voices that come externally, they might see you have to really trust those voices. And I'm not saying like they're out to get you. They
Mhm.
might just see they're talking from a space of fear and protection, not in a place of seeing your highest good. So I just wanted to speak to that. What's the next question? Can you remind me?
Yes. So the other question is, um, oh, how do we sabotage ourselves with those
Right.
and traumatic childhood events?
Okay. So if we're not conscious of of the patterns, what we're going to do, and we kind of touched on this already, Monique, is if we like to use my example, right, with my father. So I never trusted that the celebration would actually end good. So what
Mhm.
I did was I started to seek out unconsciously these situations that I would always be disappointed. And I
Mhm.
was looking for evidence. I was always looking for evidence. I was super hyper vigilant to see when the other shoe was going to drop. So that's something that we want to be aware of, that not only the external factors to give us that evidence that
Mhm.
that good is never going to come, but also that we self sabotage, right? Like it might be a really like we're up for the promotion, but we don't trust it. So that just in that last moment and unconsciously, we kind of screw it up, right?
Right.
Like we sleep in past our alarm or whatever, like unconsciously we do something to self sabotage. And so when we see that pattern happening over and over again, like what you were saying, like, why can't I up level in my career?
Right.
We have to say, okay, there's something happening here. How is it happening for me to turn this light onto the past trauma?
Mhm.
And then that's where the work is. And then once you turn that light on and you do a lot of that self love and self worth work, you don't want to self-sabotage yourself. You'll start to see those moments. You're like, oh yeah, I shouldn't stay up late and have that next glass of wine. Right.
Right.
Like I need to go to bed early so that I
Exactly.
get up and I do the X, Y, and Z to get that promotion. Right.
Right. That is
Yeah.
really good. Thank you so much. So we have another question.
Okay.
How do you release? So I guess the question is, how do you release from your body? Meaning, when there are different traumas or different things that you've dealt
Mm,
with that, and you probably already spoke to this,
mm.
and it's impacting your body. So you have pain different places. How do you release these things from your body?
Okay. So there's a couple of things that I'll say because, like I said, it's really individual. But if you know that something happens, okay, before I go there, I'll tell you a little bit of science in that when animals have a traumatic event, so think about dogs when they get into that, like they fight,
Mhm.
right? And then, their owners tear them apart. Then what they usually do is, if you've noticed, they go and they shake their body out and they go pee on something. Now, part of the peeing is to like mark their territory, but also what has happened is there's these stress hormones that are being released in their body to keep them in that fight or flight, right? They're literally fighting for their life in that moment. So all of these stress hormones, and we have them too in our bodies, adrenaline, cortisol. And so what happens is they intuitively know they have to shake it out. They don't want to get the issues in their tissues. So they shake it out. The chemicals are released through their urine and then they can go off. There's no trauma. But for us as humans, here we are in the car. Somebody like is a jerk and cuts us off. We flip them off. We're like, ah, and we almost die, right? And then we're like, oh my god, I almost died. I'm so bad. But that doesn't go anywhere. It gets stuck in our body. And so maybe by the time we get home, an hour later, we go and unconsciously we go and pee, but like it still got stuck in our body. So when there's a moment of impact where you feel that heightened state of an emotion that could potentially get locked, issue in your tissue, do a shake, like dance it out. Like that's my favorite thing is put a music on, dance it out to your favorite song, to an angry song, whatever it is that you need, and let it release. Now, trauma that you've endured over time, there's going to be a little bit more work. It's going to be like I developed my own embodiment practice where I take people through what we call the subtle body, the energetic body system. What in yoga it's called the chakra system. So I
Mhm.
take people through these different elements and different locations in their body and just start to notice, okay, Where am I holding in my hip? Where am I holding in my heart? Where am I holding in my throat? And we start to unpack those places that we're holding these patterns and then give a new way to create a new, like I said, a new blueprint in the body to release it. Because those are going to be deeper. They're going to be with you for a longer period of time. So it takes a little bit more time. But as soon as that light goes on, awareness is the transformation.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's so good. And first of all, when you said shake it off, well, when you shared the story about what I'm saying to myself, I wonder if that will work for us. But literally, when people say, you know, when you hear, look, shake it off, let's try it. And it also reminds me conversation that I had with my daughter, who is a clinical therapist, and she talked about individuals having anxiety moments or high anxiety moments. And she talked about wherever you are, whether it's a supermarket or you know, whether you're in a department store or whether you're crossing the street, she talked about movements, body movements that you do right then and there. And she gave different examples, but one of them that I thought was really funny, and I think about the dog shaking it off, and then I think about them going to find a tree afterwards. And I'm like, okay, humans can do this, but she, you know, talked about literally like stomping your feet. Just and stomping your feet. And that just also reminds me of shaking it off in the body movement. I know for me, and it's funny because I was having this conversation last night. One of the things I did, and you talked about, you know, your music. So my other personality is gangster rap. And I'm like, okay. At one time in my life, I was a gangster rapper. Like I know. So I had two particular songs that I would put on every morning, and I would blast those songs as loud. And I mean, and I would do the movements with it too. Like I was literally talking to the person, okay, and letting them know. And it just felt so good. So by the time I got to my destination, I was like, okay, I'm ready for my day. You know, so there are different things. And the other part is just being in tune with, yes, there is something going on. So this has been great, Phoebe. We're over time. I knew this was going to happen. So I want to say two things. If you would like to, and first of all, I saw, and this is before I didn't realize that you were a dancer. So I saw one of your Facebook posts when you were at this wedding, and I'm like, I'm like, no regular person can dance like that. So I'm like, okay, this is coming full circle. You should put that on TikTok. It will go viral.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was so much fun. Yeah, you know, so here I am. This is the story of my life, is that like here I am, like this sweet little white girl. Nobody really thinks much of me. And then all of a sudden I'm like, hey ladies, I'm here. And everyone's like, what the hell? Where'd you come from?
You know, I had to watch the videos twice. I'm like, wait a minute. This is here. And it was so good. But yeah, that's definitely a viral video. Which now I get it, because I'm like, no one dances this good. So now I see why, because you're professional, you know, you are a professional dancer. So if you would like to speak with Phoebe, if you would like to find out more about what it is that Phoebe does, there is absolutely, when I tell you, just a phenomenal person in general. You are just a great person. And when we met, we automatically connected. You can look at the bottom of the screen, and Phoebe can be found at phoebeleona.com. But Phoebe, if you can leave us with two or three tips or strategies that will help us move forward in terms of recognizing, you know, the different signs in our body that might be related, that might be telling us, hey, something's wrong.
Yeah. So there's so many tips, but I'm going to stick with play. So play, and it's actually, let's see, how many letters are in that? 4. So I'm going to give you 4 really quick tips. So plays being an acronym. So P is just simply pause. So if you catch yourself in any of the scenarios that we talked about today, if you're feeling a heightened state of emotion that is just like you just need to put the pause button on, take a conscious pause. And then L is just to simply listen. So when we come to this space, we don't come with judgment. We don't try to change anything. We have no expectation for it, but just simply listen and go, okay, what is here? Now, this could be listen to what's happening in your brain, when your mind, it could be something in your heart, it could be something, a sensation in your body, but just to honor that space of listening. And then A is to, and this kind of shifts into the manifestation part of what we talked about today, is activate. Activate how you want to feel. So if you're in a state that is no longer comfortable, so if you're experiencing that heightened state of emotion that you're not feeling comfortable with, you could say, okay, what do I want on the other side of it? I want to feel peace. I want to feel calm, or I just want to feel I have a lot of energy because I'm depressed right now, whatever it is. Just set that intention, activate how you want to feel. And then the why is to say a full body yes. Now, full body yes is maybe it is putting that power song on and singing in the mirror and talking nasty to that person that, cut you off in traffic. Or maybe it is to just, like really breathe and be in your body and feel like really confident in it. Whatever that means to you, you just give it a full body yes and you lean into it. So just play, PLAY, pause, listen, activate, and say yes.
I absolutely love that. And I'm too busy listening, so I can't even type in the chat because I don't want to miss it. But I am going to go back and click play, that acronym, what it stands for, in the chat. Phoebe, thank you so much. This has been amazing, which I knew it was going to be. I can't wait until we connect again. I would absolutely love to have a part two. And thank you so much, for all that you do. And you also have a book. If you can just tell us about your book and where we can purchase it.
Oh, thank you so much, Monique. My book came out in April. It's called Dear Radiant One. It is my memoir, so it tells a lot more of these stories that we touched on today with the practices, those somatic, these embodiment practices and expanded awareness practices that help you through your own emotional recovery journey. And so I use the storytelling of writing letters to the emotions. And then I go into writing a letter to anger. Now, what do we do when we need to befriend anger or befriend fear? Or how do we invoke more joy or gratitude and love into our life? So it's a memoir and a self-transformation book. And where is it sold? It's sold anywhere where books are sold. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere online that you would like to purchase a book. And and I want to honor you too, Monique, because the feeling is mutual. When I met you, I was like, oh, this is my sister. I still do every once in a while. I did it the other day. I was like, I am a boss. I am a boss.
I love it. Thank you so much. Yes. We're definitely going to do this again. And of course, I look forward to staying in touch and staying.
Me too.
A wonderful evening. Listen, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please go to Sisters Inspire Sisters and hit the subscribe button. Like, share, comment, watch the replay, take some notes, and share this broadcast with a special friend or someone that you know could use this information. Have a great evening, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.